Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the main shrine room at the London Buddhist Centre. Really warm welcome, especially if it's the first time that you've ever been here, either virtually or at all. My name is Suvana Jyoti, and I'm one of the teachers that's going to be leading this week. And tonight we've got the very first evening of the Break Free course. So there's going to be a team of 4 teachers doing different evenings. So there's myself and Maitreya Bandhu this evening, and I'll introduce him a little bit later on. And then on other evenings, we've got Surya Gupta and Akasha Mitra. So you've got a whole team for this week to introduce you to this topic and to help you to explore this topic. But before we get into all that, we will be starting shortly, and I'll probably repeat some of that for people who are just about to join. But in the meantime, we also have a team. We've got Hyril and Danny and Kieran. They're just going to come and have a quick wave to you. So we have a tech team, thank goodness, because Maitreya Bandhu and I would be absolutely hopeless. And there is the chat function on YouTube. So please do, if we were all on this course together pre-COVID, we would all be in the same room. So as a way of trying to sort of recreate that, please do use the chat function and say hello, tell us your name and where you're tuning in from this evening. Particularly if it's kind of outside of London, but even if it's in London, that's good too, just to get a little bit of a sense of who's here and who's coming along. And then later on in the evening, there will be an opportunity to put some, if you've got any questions for us, those can go into the chat box. So Hyril, have we got anybody brave enough to say hello yet?
We have. We've got Nina from New York City.
Nina from New York City, welcome. That's fantastic. What a great kicking off for the week. I have no idea what time it is in New York. It's probably about early afternoon or something like that in New York at this time. So welcome, Nina, and I hope you enjoy the evening here in London.
And then we've got Stephen, who's a bit more local, from Bow.
Oh, Stephen from Bow. So that's walking distance for those of you who don't know where Bow is. So welcome, Steve. It's good to have you too. Anyone else?
Gurdeep from Port Talbot.
Gurdeep from Port Talbot. Hello there, Gurdeep. You've been many times on Wednesday evenings, I think, so it's great to have you back.
We have got Linda from Chesterfield.
Linda from Chesterfield. Hello, welcome.
Phoebe from Oxford.
Phoebe from Oxford. Gosh, we are dotting around the country as well as across the pond.
Patrick from Suffolk.
Patrick from Suffolk. Hello, Patrick.
Oh, we've got Bridget from Germany.
Bridget from Germany. Hi, Bridget. Hello, welcome. Guten Abend. That's it. I hope you speak English because there's not going to be any more than that. How are we doing for time? Oh, we've still got a few minutes. Who else have we got, Hyril?
We have got Leslie from Chingford.
Leslie from Chingford, not so far away, just up on the old overground line. Hello, Leslie.
Anyone new?
Yep. Anybody who's never been before, if this is their first time to come on one of our courses, or silence.
Got a few regulars. We've got Dougie tuning in and Harvey as well.
Hi, Dougie. Hi, Harvey. Anybody else?
We've got Maitrijit from India.
Maitrijit from India. Hello, welcome, Maitrijit. So that's one of our order members over in India. How fantastic. God, we're covering the continents, aren't we? We've got 3 continents already, and it's only 2 minutes past 7.
And Vimala Nandi says hello from Glasgow.
Vimala Nandi from Glasgow. Hello, Vimala Nandi. Welcome. That's my hometown. I know it doesn't sound like it, but it is my hometown.
Ned from Berlin.
Ned from Berlin. Wow, another German, or another person in Germany. Hello, Ned. Welcome.
Got, hopefully I'll pronounce this right. It's John from Debevois.
Okay, John from something that sounds like Debevois. Debevois sounds like it might be French, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably our most local, Ryan from Bethnal Green.
Ryan from Bethnal Green. Hello, we are all currently in Bethnal Green, for those of you that don't know where the London Buddhist Centre is, so Ryan must be very, very close to us, somewhere around here.
Teresa from Sweden.
Teresa from Sweden, someone else from Europe. Hello, Teresa. Welcome to you.
Fred from North London.
Fred from North London. Hello, Fred. Is that probably Fred Radley? Hello, Fred.
That's him.
Okay. Any more? Any last hellos before we kick off?
Ellie from Berlin.
Another from Berlin. Hello. We've got a contingent. Hello, Pelly. Did you say? Ellie from Berlin. Hi, Ellie. Welcome. Okay. So it's gone 7 o'clock, so we'll make a start now. So yeah, just to repeat for those who've joined us, my name is Suvana Jyoti, and I'm one of the people that's going to be leading the course this week, this break-free course. On the evening sessions, so myself and Maitre Bandhu, Surya Gupta and Akasha Mitra, we're going to take it in turns to lead the evening sessions. So this evening, for the opening session, it's myself and Maitre Bandhu, who I will introduce you to later on. So the format of the evening, what we're going to do in a moment, is we're going to start with a bit of a meditation, just to help us all to really kind of arrive and to settle and to get into the right sort of space in our minds to really take in what's on offer this evening. So I'll lead that through. So and I'll talk you through it. So don't worry if you're new to meditation. That's completely fine. I'll talk you through it, and that'll be probably for about 15 minutes. And then I'm going to introduce Maitre Bandhu, and then he will be giving the sort of main talk for this evening. I've just realised I can't actually remember what the actual title of the talk is, but I'm sure he will tell us. So that's stay tuned if you want to know what the title of the talk is. So Maitre Bandhu will be giving us a bit of a talk. We'll then have a little sort of leg stretch, brief kind of tea break in the middle, and then a little bit more of the talk. And then there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers on any of the topics of the talk or meditation with myself and Maitre Bandhu. And then we're going to finish the evening with a little bit of ritual and chanting, but I'll say a bit more about that when we get there. And we should be finished about 9 o'clock. So I hope that gives you a bit of a shape for things. And just in general, I'd really encourage you, if you possibly can, to come to as many things on this course as you can. We understand that may not be possible to come to absolutely everything every day. You might be working or busy with family or whatever. But if you can, do try to come to as much as you can, particularly the evening talks, because you'll really benefit more from the week, and you'll get a really good sense of a kind of cumulative sense of practice through the week. And then the week will be ending on Sunday as a sort of big finale, will be our Padmasambhava Day festival. So the week's kind of leading up to that. So do try and come to as much as you can. Okay. So I think that's everything. Yes, I'm getting the nod, so that's good. So why don't we all set ourselves up for a little meditation. We're just going to dim the lights a bit for a meditation. And if you've not meditated before, if you can just try and find somewhere to sit where you'll be nice and upright. So if you're on a chair, make sure your back's upright, that you're not slumped. If you're sitting on the floor, do make sure that you're comfortable. Don't try and sort of bend yourself into any kind of gymnastic poses that are going to be agony in the next 30 seconds. Just sit comfortably and upright. Thanks, Danny. And when you're ready, we invite you to close your eyes. And just starting by just getting a bit of a sense of the contact of where you are, what you're sitting on. So a sense of the quality of the sensations where you're in contact with the earth through your seat. And what I'm going to be inviting you to do through this whole practice is to just keep coming back into your physical sensations. And I can pretty much guarantee you that your mind will probably ping back up into thinking quite quickly. And that's fine, that's normal. So you don't need to make that a problem, you don't need to stress about that, that's just normal, that just means that you're human. But the training and the practice is just to keep inviting your mind every time it pops up into distraction of some kind, is to just invite it back and into the physical experience of your body. So right now, inviting it into the physical experience of your seat. Noticing the kind of pressure, the temperature. Maybe even noticing that it's quite hard to really tell where you end and the chair begins. There's just a kind of blur of sensations there, so just noticing that. And then just paying a little bit of attention to just making sure that you're sitting as upright as you can, but also with a sort of relaxed, you want a kind of relaxed but alert posture. So that your shoulders are over your hips and your head's really properly on the top of your spine with your chin maybe slightly dropped. So you might want to imagine sort of opening up at the back of the skull where the spine joins the skull. And now just broadening your awareness to see if you can get a sense of your whole body experience just now. You very likely might have spent the day stuck in your head in one way or another. Probably lots of you have been on screens a lot of the day. So I'm just inviting you to keep smoothing and soothing your awareness down through your body until you can have an overall sense of your whole physical being. Not just your eyes on a screen or your thumbs on a text message. Really inviting you into the body and just noticing all the different kinds of sensations that there are there. So it's a bit like dropping like a drop of blue ink into a glass of water and just watching the blue colour gradually spread through the whole water. So thinking of your awareness a bit like that, seeing if you can just keep allowing it to seep down through your body. So having an overall sense of the shape that you're taking up, your place on the planet, as it were. And seeing if you can just soften your face a bit. We can't see you. So see if you can just completely let your face relax in a way we don't normally do. We're normally putting on a face to face the world with, but you don't have to do that just now. So see if you can soften your brow, soften your eyes, and soften your jaw. See if you can notice the sense of the air on your skin of your face. Softening the face, tuning in to that contact with the air. And now letting that awareness show up in the arms and hands. And the shoulders, arms and hands, seeing if you can soften them a little bit too. And just notice whatever sensations might be there. The different angles of the joints. Maybe a warmth or a tingling. Just noticing whatever's happening. Just coming back to that whenever you get distracted. And now taking your awareness across your back. So from top to bottom of the back and from side to side. Noticing the spine and the ribs at the back. And the gentle movement of the muscles with the breath at the back. And then bringing your awareness down and into the lower half of your body. So noticing the pelvis and the legs and the feet. Just tuning into what's there and seeing if you can relax the legs. Doesn't really matter what position you're sitting in. You can still imaginatively relax the legs. Soften the feet. Seeing if you can really let yourself really give your weight up to the earth. We're often slightly tensed away from the earth. But we can just let the earth hold us. And now gradually just beginning to notice that we are a body breathing. Or that we're being breathed. So see if you can just tune into that gentle, ever-moving experience of breathing. See if you can really let yourself feel the sensations of it, not just thinking about breathing. So for the next couple of minutes, seeing if you can keep a broad awareness of your whole body, but with a gentle spotlight on the breathing. So having that kind of center stage. As a kind of an anchor to come back to whenever you get distracted. Just coming back into those physical sensations. Just keep coming back. Soft face, soft hands, soft feet. Just dropping any effort you're making to try to do anything. Just for the last couple of moments, just sitting until I ring the bell. Just gently in your own time, just allowing yourself to come out of that practice. See if you can stay with that kind of meditative space, but feel free to make yourself comfortable.
Some people having problems with the sound. If you saw anything, try moving the mic a bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's unusual. Normally I have a voice that cuts through concrete, so I'm terribly sorry, people. If I do this, because maybe we'll do a little sound check when Maitri Bandhu starts the talk. So sorry about that, people. So is that any better? Oh, we don't know yet. We'll just see. I tell you what, we'll get Maitri Bandhu on, and then then anything could happen. So, okay. So it's my very great delight to introduce you to Maitri Bandhu. I'm really looking forward to what he's going to tell us tonight. And so come on down. Now, what do you want to do? Do you want... Oh, shall I take mine?
Good. Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Let's just do a quick sound check before we start. Thank you. Jyoti, that's really good. Good to be here again. I've just come back from a retreat an online retreat I was leading in Adhisthana. What would you say? Anyway, so it's nice to be back here at the London Buddhist Centre. Okay, so what I want to be talking about, I'm going to introduce you to this figure, this semi-mythical figure. Traditionally, he's supposed to be half historical and half mythical, which I think is in itself a metaphor, but I might touch on that, we'll see. I'm going to introduce you to this figure from Tibetan Buddhism, particularly called Padmasambhava. When I was thinking about this, I thought it would be good to have an image of Padmasambhava on the shrine. But then I thought actually it would be quite good not to. Because what you see as an image of Padmasambhava, you see that image through the particular painter's point of view, you see it through Tibetan iconography and so on. I think I know what the problem is. It's that wrong way around. It should be like that. So that should be better, because that's the...
It was that way too, Jyoti, and
no, that should be the way. Can you hear me all right? Is that... We're unusually having...
Yeah, we don't usually have these problems,
No.
so do bear with us.
It's quite mixed. A few people are saying it's absolutely fine, and several are saying it's not. It might just be something weird.
That's weird. We were checking the connection nearer to you. Let me just see if I can come a bit closer to you. Okay, so let's hope you can hear me. Yeah, does that look okay? Yeah, so that should be better. So yes, I had this idea of let's have it on the shrine, and I thought actually, when you see images of these, let's just call Padmasambhava an archetypal figure for a minute because it gets a bit complex. But you do see it through a particular lens and a particular cultural lens, and it would be better. I thought it would be better if we all just imagined him together, rather than saying, well, this is what he looked like, because in a way that's kind of a shortcut, and I think that it'd be better to just imagine him. So the best way to introduce him, first of all, and what I want to do is talk about just two elements of him, and as we go through the week, we'll be exploring the different aspects of Padmasambhava's life and action. And the way you understand somebody, the way you understand your partner, the way you understand your children, the way you understand your friends is by what they do. That's how you judge them. That's how you know who they are, is by how they act. So over this week, we'll be seeing how this figure, Padmasambhava, that for you at the moment is a bit of a mystery, because we haven't even worked out whether it's a historical figure or an archetypal figure, and there's actually something of value in that, I think. We're just going to see how he acts, what this figure does, and that will tell you what he represents. But I thought the best place to start is to start, obviously, with the myth of his birth. Interestingly, Padmasambhava was supposed to be born on a lotus in the middle of Lake Dharmakosha, this fantastically deep lake in Tibet. And he was born on a lotus as an 8-year-old boy. And he's sometimes pictured with beads of perspiration on his brow. So he's supposed to be miraculously born. So you can see that we're not really in history. We're in story, we're in parable, we're in fireside story, really. And stories tell you more about life. They're more accurate, I think, than abstractions. I've always felt this, and I feel it more and more strongly, that when we talk in terms of myth, parable, story, and so on, we're actually getting to something more like, this is what life is like for you, isn't it? It's not saying this is what happens to you. You got up, you had breakfast, you probably didn't go to work, you probably went on Zoom, etc. A myth, a parable, is trying to get at, this is really what's going on, isn't it? So that parable and myth, they can tell you lots of things at the same time, but they're always trying to say, This is what's really going on with your life. It's not really that you're going to work or watching Zoom or da-da-da. These are the themes, these are the mythic themes that run through your life. And if you can read story well, and if you can read parable well, you get a closer sense of what your life, whoever you are just now, Nina in New York, sorry, I forgot the name, in Berlin, in India, in Oxford, in London, whether you're sitting on your sofa or on your kitchen chair, whether you're washing up whilst you're listening to me, or whether you're rapt attention, parable is trying to get below historical, the sort of obviousness of historical things like washing up and doing stuff, to what are the deep patterns of your life. What is your life really about? Yeah. So according to tradition, as I said, Padmasambhava, this figure that we're introducing you to, and a figure that we're going to eventually end up with a day-long celebration on Sunday, a figure that's tremendously important to Buddhism generally, but also a figure that's very important to Sangharakshita, the founder of the Triratna Buddhist order. He once saw an image of Padmasambhava for the first time. He'd never seen this image before, a huge image in Nepal, and immediately felt this incredible kinship with the image, a sense that he had known the image of Padmasambhava all his life somehow, that it had always been there. A sort of mystical experience of an image. I don't know whether you've had this, but where an image seems to speak to something so deep in you that you feel like you've always known it. So Padmasambhava was born on a lotus, according to the story. So we're in story time, and that's a great place to be. So in story time, it's about don't take things literally. It's don't say, oh, and hang on, where are we in history now? You have to enter that world of story time. And in story time, he's born as an 8-year-old boy with these beads of perspiration on his brow, which actually is a wonderful image for energy. For Sanghaji, a friend of mine, he's got 2 boys, he's got a daughter as well, and they're just full of energy. They just, like you try and pick them, even when they were small, when you try and pick them up, they wriggle all the time because they just want to run around and do stuff. They don't want to do anything else but be energy. Yeah? So you see that even as an 8-year-old boy, it's an image of the appearance in the world of completely untrammeled energy. There's no repression, there's no suppression, there's no guilt, there's no feeling bad about yourself. There's just energy. This little boy, this squirming little boy's energy arising like that. Now, interestingly, according to the tradition, Padmasambhava was born 42 years after the death of the Buddha. Yeah? That's the myth, that at least one of the myths around Padmasambhava. He's born 42 years after the death of the Buddha. So that's not literally true. Historically, he was born to the degree he's a historical figure, and there does seem to be a historical figure mixed in with a mythic figure. When you read his so-called autobiography, The Life of Liberation of Padmasambhava, you don't see very much history at all. It's myth. It's like myth right out there. It's a lot of it. You just think, I don't know what to make of this, frankly. But actually, there did seem to be a historical person, but he was born much, much later than 42 years after the death of the Buddha. But you see how this is a really good example of history versus myth. So history is valuable and important, and it's telling one kind of truth. Myth is telling a different kind of truth. So it's not that it's not true that he wasn't born 42 years after the death of the Buddha. It's just not literally true in terms of historical truth. But in mythic truth sounds a bit kind of highfalutin. In deep truth, it's very, very true that Padmasambhava was born 42 years after the death of the Buddha. So that's a mythic image. So what is it trying to get at? So you can. I thought of 2 readings of that. The first is that if you imagine somebody becoming a Buddhist, meeting the Buddha, practicing the Buddha's Dharma. The figure of the Buddha wouldn't look anything like this. Of course, he wouldn't be golden. He'd be an Indian man with wearing rags. He'd probably be unshaved, probably fairly smelly. He probably wouldn't be tall, for instance, just as a guess. And yet he would, when you met him, if you met him, you would meet something that you'd never seen before, that would be either wonderful to you or fairly terrifying, or sometimes a bit of both. For instance, when the Buddha looked at you, he's supposed to have this elephant stare. So that means that he'd turn his whole head to look at you and give you his whole attention. And this is someone giving you their whole attention with nothing left over. Yeah, you are rarely, if ever, looked at that deeply. But you can imagine people meeting the Buddha, practicing with the Buddha, learning the Buddha's Dharma, and that Dharma is learning to meditate. It's learning how to behave. I mean, it's talked about as sila, which is ethics, but I personally find the language of ethics sounds a bit like something you might study at university. Aristotle's ethics or so on. Ethics just means how you behave. And you'd be learning from the Buddha that how you behave, what you do in your mind, what you do with your speech and what you do with your body matters. In fact, it matters much, much more than you think. In fact, the Buddha would be telling you that everything you do matters. It matters in many different ways, but one of the ways it matters is it's constantly creating your life. Yeah? If you don't want to believe the Buddha when he says that, try acting like what you do doesn't matter. Yeah? Try treating people like how you treat them doesn't matter. And you'll end up very, very quickly with a nightmare. Yeah? And of course you see history, people treating other people and themselves like how they treat them doesn't matter. So the Buddha would be saying your actions, and the Buddha's idea of action goes all the way deep into the very tiny moments in your mind. Your actions matter. Yeah? And that means that your life is your responsibility because your actions are yours. It's so easy to blame others, to feel indignant with others, to feel that I can't do this because they do that. But the Buddha would be very, very tough on that sort of thing. He'd say, actually, no, this is your life, this is your responsibility. How you act and how you don't act matters. Yeah? It's a great challenge he gives to you. So he gives you that challenge, he gives you the challenge of learning to meditate, and he gives you the challenge of trying to develop wisdom, yeah? Of trying to see things as they really are. That's who you'd meet if you met the historical Buddha. And you can imagine practicing with him, can't you? Trying to meditate, trying to realize that your actions matter, trying to be kind rather than unkind, truthful rather than evasive, generous rather than mean, understanding rather than indignant, all of the things that all of us human beings struggle with. You could call it in the West a life of virtue. Virtue is a difficult matter. If we're not careful, we'll reduce virtue to a few things we say on Facebook. But human beings throughout history have tried to live out virtue. Plato, Confucius, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, and many, many other figures, poets, writers, artists. They've tried to live a life of virtue. It's very difficult because you do want to do good, and actually sometimes you can't bear it. Sometimes you act badly, and I act badly, and sometimes you do. And you wish you didn't, and you regret it sometimes. Sometimes you don't regret it, which of course is worrying. But yes, you're trying to learn those things. Yeah. So you can imagine learning those, and in mythic time, the teacher who embodies that, who embodies kindness, wisdom, complete kindness, complete wisdom, and something a bit spooky, frankly, a bit kind of like, I don't know what to make of this guy. He doesn't fit in. He doesn't seem like anybody I know. He won't play my games. He won't. He's a bit uncomfortable, yeah, but yet incredibly alluring, and immensely kind, to the point where it's almost sort of hurts your heart. Yeah? to be empathised with so deeply. So then you have to imagine he dies, and then some people think that the whole of Buddhism is trying to come to terms with the death of the Buddha. Because instead of the enlightened person teaching, I've often said that actually the only person that should teach Buddhism is the Buddha, but because you haven't got him anymore, you have to have us. We try our best, but we are definitely not the Buddha, and nor, frankly, are you. Without the Buddha, you can imagine that how do you learn these difficult lessons to meditate deeply, to change your behaviour so that your life keeps flourishing rather than that it goes round in circles? How do you find wisdom? How do you find meaning without the teacher? Yeah. Now, in mythic time, you'd carry on practicing, and then as you practiced, you'd really be confronted by the challenge that the Buddha's given you. I notice this, again and again, I'm sure Savannah Jyoti does as well, that when you first come to Buddhism, it does seem pretty glorious. You make progress very quickly, you often enough anyway. Some people have what's called beginner's mind. They have these fantastic meditation experiences. I didn't have that, but many of my friends did. You can make changes in your life quickly, and you see the effects of those changes quite quickly. You can change your behaviour, and you can see the effects of that quite quickly. But what you gradually start to see, I'm afraid, and this is, the figure of Padmasambhava is a challenging figure. So if you don't want challenging talks, you might be better off with Netflix, frankly. So there's no way of making Padmasambhava not challenging. But as you started to practice the Buddha's Dharma, it would stir you up. Yeah, that initial phase of I can do this, I can meditate, I can get something, I can change my life, I can flourish. I remember my first retreat, I felt so happy. So deeply in touch with meaning, so deeply in touch with value. I thought my life would keep opening like that. That, troubles, bye-bye, Buddhahood, here you come, that sort of thing. And that sounds very naive, but I think inevitably one goes into the spiritual life with a kind of naivety. In fact, the so-called spiritual life, which really I'd rather just think of a human life, is it's often, well, not often, but sometimes can become a bit of a fantasy. Sometimes you hear people talking about spiritual life or spiritual matters or Buddhism, and it really, frankly, feels like a bit of a fantasy, a bright idea, a nice idea, a spiritual, rather fluffy idea. Yeah. Now that's natural enough. Sometimes you wouldn't do anything if you weren't a bit naive. You certainly wouldn't do a building project or try and write a novel or paint a painting or dance or to do anything that's really worth it. You need a bit of naivety to believe that you can do it. And usually, I remember when I first started painting, you get this great moment of, oh, I can do it, and then quite quickly it becomes much harder because your standards go up, what you want to achieve goes up, and that's what happens in what I'd rather call the Dharma life, the Buddhist life. You come in, hopefully you get this inspirational vision of the Buddha, and you get an inspirational vision of the possibility of wisdom based on deep meditation, based on a flourishing of your life. You get this vision and you want to change. But at some point, the parts of you that don't want to change catch up on you. The deeper habits that you've got catch up on you. The parts of yourself that you hoped that contact with Buddhism would kind of erase and would sweetify out, perhaps, or spiritualize away, they actually confront you. Yeah. So genuine spiritual life, genuine Dharma life, stirs you up. Yeah. At least to some extent. It's tricky to get this right because it doesn't want to stir you up too much in a way that's unhelpful. But if it doesn't stir you up, it's not really Buddhism. It's not really anything much. Even to learn anything, really, you need to be a bit stirred up. I mean, it's quite interesting when you think of it analogously. If you want to learn anything, you've got to feel stupid, haven't you? Or at least you've got to feel like you can't do stuff. That's really important. If you don't allow yourself to feel like you don't know stuff, you're a bit stupid. Remember when you start trying to learn to play the piano, you can feel your brain trying to do the thing. You feel a bit stupid, a bit dumb, and then your piano teacher just says, no, it's like this. You know that feeling? So the very act of learning something in human life is often a bit uncomfortable. It makes you feel a bit like you don't know stuff, and people don't like not knowing stuff. Even children don't like to be caught not knowing stuff. So any real human growth will have some degree of being stirred up, of being discomforted. Otherwise, basically, you're just staying with what you know and who you know and what you think. And however impressive you are, that's a small place from a Buddhist point of view. Who you know, what you think, what your opinions are about stuff, what you think about Mr. Trump, what you think about, I don't know, this, that and the other. They're fine opinions perhaps, but they're small. They're small fry from a Buddhist point of view, yeah. So Padmasambhava is particularly a figure that wants to shake you a bit, yeah, and say, look, there's much more out there. There is much more out there. So to see that Padmasambhava comes along 42 years after the death of the Buddha. So you've been trying to grow and change as a Buddhist, perhaps. And I want to say something about how you can just think about this without being a Buddhist. You've been trying to practice ethics, as it's usually called, sila. You've been trying to practice samadhi, meditation, and you've been trying to cultivate wisdom. And you've been doing that with inspiration, hopefully, and joy even. But you'll definitely start to meet challenges. You'll start to meet obstacles. You'll meet them in people around you, and you'll meet them in yourself. And that's when Padmasambhava appears. Yeah? That's the meaning of Padmasambhava, is he appears when your good intentions start to break down. Yeah? We human beings have got... I've hardly met anyone in my life that I didn't think had good intentions, broadly speaking. I have met one or two that I didn't think had, but it's very rare. It's quite rare to meet a bad person. I mean, it might be just the company I keep, but in my experience, it's quite rare. What you meet is people with really good intentions who still get into terrible trouble. Sometimes terrible trouble, sometimes just habitual trouble, sometimes just ordinary trouble. But it's usually not because you've got bad intentions. It's because there's not enough wisdom. There's not enough looking around you. There's not enough looking in you. There's not enough confronting the facts of your life. And Padmasambhava represents that confrontation. So if you imagine the Buddha like this, gold, in this mythic story, golden, surrounded by an aura of light, beautifully peaceful and majestical, Padmasambhava appears not completely, quite differently. So for a start off, he's stepping towards you. So he's not sitting in meditation like the figure is behind me. He's this mind, as it were, but this mind, instead of sitting in meditation, is stepping towards you, and he's looking directly at you. The Buddha figure is nearly always pictured with half-closed eyes in meditation. Padmasambhava has his eyes open, sometimes almost staringly open, and he's looking directly at you and seeming to be moving towards you. Yeah. Interesting when I think of it like this, because Padmasambhava is in Tibetan tradition often called the second Buddha. So it's best to think of Padmasambhava as what the Buddha looks like to us when we're really starting to confront ingrained habits, embittered patterns, habitual ways of being and behaving, the kind of mess that we can sometimes... Do you know that time, where you feel like, gosh, I've been in literally this kind of mess again and again and again. What is there to learn from this kind of mess? Yeah? So Padmasambhava is what the Buddha looks like when you've been churned up a bit, when you've been confronted a bit, when you've been shaken up a bit, when your good ideas, your best intentions can't carry you much further, where you have to look deeper, where you have to find greater resources. Yeah? So I think that's the myth of the appearance of Padmasambhava. And so that's how it might appear in the life of a Buddhist, somebody who's trying to practice Buddhism. And for me, of course, I think Buddhism is the best thing that we can be doing. What we want, what Buddhism is weird. It's a shame it has its ism on it, like Marxism or I don't know, Nazism or something. It's not a theory. It's not an ideology. It's not. It's really Buddhism is a way of flourishing your life so that you become the Buddha. So that you become the Buddha. It's not an ism. It's not an ideology that you can kind of pick up and play with. So you can see that from a Buddhist point of view, you start, and you see this very, very often. People have a really good sort of few years into Buddhism where they learn a lot, the teachings are new, you hear from people like myself and Savannah Jyoti and Suragupta and Akash Mitra, and frankly we all look quite good, and we are good, but through the screen and with this lighting we look a bit shiny, and we are a bit shiny, but we're not just a bit shiny. We've got our own things that we're all working with. But what you see is quite often people have a start where it's good, really good. You learn things quickly. You get to know these teachers. They seem really inspiring. You've never heard these stories before. You've never heard of Padmasambhava before. It's all a bit new. You're waking up. You're making progress. But quite quickly, hopefully not too quickly, because one of the great tasks of the Dharma life is to keep coming back to the start. I think I got one of my first moments of wisdom the first time I came to this room. I was taught the mindfulness of breathing practice, and I knew instinctively, intuitively, that I was a Buddhist. I'd always been a Buddhist, and I always would be a Buddhist. Yeah. I didn't know anything about Buddhism at that time. That for me was a moment of what Buddhism would call wisdom, of perfect wisdom. It was like recognizing who I really was, and I always had been and always would be. People often come in with this sense of moving forward quite quickly, and then you start to hit stuff. Then you start to hit your old patterns, the things that you thought you'd left behind when you came to the Buddhist Center. I've seen this trajectory again and again and again. And you see that it's at that moment you need to find deeper motivations. It's at that moment you need to look more deeply at those things that are obstructing you, rather than trying to wish they weren't there, or rather than trying to pretend they're not there, or try to get around them. You need to have a much longer look at who you are, beyond merely your good intentions, your best intentions even. Nothing wrong with your good intentions, nothing wrong with your best intentions. They give you a propulsive introduction to the Dharma life, but they'll start to either run out, or you'll start to meet things that you didn't expect. So, for instance, when I came to Buddhism, I've got 3 older brothers and a younger sister, and I was very bullied as a child. So when I came to Buddhism, I thought of myself as a really nice guy. Don't worry, folks, I am a nice guy. Quite troubled. I was very troubled. I was 25. Really very troubled. Looking back on it, I think I was probably quite depressed when I was very young. And neurotic, yeah, okay, yeah. I was at art school, smoking various things. I was a bit all over the place. And I made progress on all that fairly quickly, in some ways at least. What I didn't expect was my anger, for instance. I thought my anger was my brother's anger. I didn't expect to confront that in me. I thought that it wasn't something I had particularly. I could be upset. I was quite sensitive. I was vulnerable, but I didn't expect to be confronted by my anger. That's really not unusual. Yeah? And you see, your anger is your energy. Of course, if you express it, you very often hurt people, and at the very least, they start to distrust you. At the very least, they won't tell you stuff because they can't quite trust whether you're going to get angry with them or not. But if you repress it, you just make yourself depressed. I think that's basically what I'd done, is I'd gone down that, line of repression, depression. Yeah. So you see, when you meet that force of anger, like I did, I needed to find deeper resources, and that's what Padmasambhava represents. He represents deeper resources, and in the second, we're going to have a break in a moment, just have a bit of a leg stretch. But in the second half, I want to say a bit more about how he looks. At the moment, all we know is he's looking directly at you, and he's supposed to have these very dark eyes. It's interesting, by the way, that he's mixed race. He's traditionally half Indian and half Mongolian, which is saying something very deep. I think it's saying this is somebody you can't pigeonhole, including racially pigeonhole. So he's looking at you directly, he's stepping towards you, In the second half, I'll say something more about what he's wearing, because I think that tells you a lot about who he is, and I think it tells you a lot about what we might become. But I just want to finish this first section by just saying, I talked about what it might be like if you're practicing Buddhism, if you're practicing it at all seriously. Of course, it's very easy with Buddhism, like it is with, whatever, learning medieval history, crochet, whatever, to take it up in a rather light way and not really commit yourself, not really get into it, in which case these deeper habits of ours and the stronger potentials of ours, including our energies, we won't be confronted by them very much. If you don't take practice seriously, and I don't mean seriously in a pretentious, over-earnest way, which is actually a way of not being serious, but if we don't take practice seriously, then it won't churn us up very much. Just as if you're trying to play the piano and you're not that bothered, guess what? You won't learn much and it won't stretch you very much, no. But if you really want to play well, it really will stretch you, and it could become, for some people, almost the meaning of their life. But I want to just finish by saying how it might look in just ordinary human terms. Let's put aside Buddhism for a moment. And I think that's how I'm reading it is that all of us, everyone I've met, with only very few exceptions, and even them I think it's perhaps just particular trauma and complexity, but everybody wants the best from their life. Everybody wants every day to be really good. They want to be loved. Everybody wants to be loved, whether they look like they do or not. They want to love other people, or at least they might not want to use that language, but they want to feel really connected with other people. They definitely don't want to always be criticising them in their head and feeling, indignant about what they said just then. And next time I'm going to go say this. They don't want to do that stuff. They want to feel like they're kind of quite peaceful and not anxious all the time. They want to feel like their life is going somewhere. That life is going to be something you're going to keep discovering and opening up. We all want that, don't we? That as we live, gosh, we get wiser, we get kinder, we discover things, we learn stuff. The person we are when we are young, we grow out of, but we don't disavow. We stretch ourselves, we find new ways of dealing with difficult situations. We can be courageous, we can tell the truth, we can stand against people if we have to, but with the right kind of attitude. We're not timid anymore. All of us want that stuff. And all of us, I think, try to live like that. And we're beset by things, aren't we? Nobody thinks what I'm going to do today is spend my day complaining to myself about things. Nobody thinks that. Or nobody thinks I'm just going to feel I'm going to feel overlooked today, and I'm going to feel thwarted today, and I'm going to feel like nobody loves me today, or I'm just going to be really, really critical of that person in my mind all day. That's a good way of spending my day. Nobody thinks like that. But I think we've got an ideal. Being human is its own ideal. What Buddhism offers you is an understanding that ideal goes incomparably deeper than you think. It goes beyond anything that normally we would think of human. It goes into something incomparably deeper, that's much deeper than we expect. But even that being human is an ideal. And it's an ideal that's difficult to live up to. So first we start with a golden image of an ideal, which draws us forward. But quite soon you'll need a figure that's less golden, that's more willing to come and meet you in those difficult places that you need to learn from and help you with your courage. And that's the figure of Padmasambhava. That's what he represents in human life, is we really want the best for ourselves, and if we're honest, it's not working out. At least it's not working out all the time by any means. So we need to find another image, and that image is Padmasambhava. But let's have a break now. Let's have a leg stretch, and you can go and get yourself a cup of tea. And so let's come back at let's say 7 minutes past 8. Terrible with numbers. 7 minutes past 8, and then I'll say a little bit more. I want to just say a bit more about what Padmasambhava looks like, and then as we go through this week, you'll start to get a sense of him. I hope an imaginative sense of him, not a literal sense of him. It doesn't really matter what he's come to look like through a Buddhist tradition. What you need, what I need, is his imaginative reality in our life. Yeah. But let's stop for now and get a break, and then I'll appear in front of the camera again and draw you back from your tea. Okay? Good. Oh, what is it?
Yeah, it was right low.
Oh, I see. There you go. Good. So let's call you all back with your cups of tea. It's a shame that this isn't on Zoom, because one of the lovely things about Zoom is you get to see people, I don't know if I should say that, but you get to see people's room, a bit of shelf, a struggling pot plant. It's quite touching sometimes, particularly when Suragupta was leading the meditation this morning at 8 a.m. For the regulars, for those of you who know the practices. And she was just saying how lovely it is, and it is this lovely sense of all these people that are appearing, you're meditating together in this world together. It's really, really, really lovely, very, very touching. Okay, I'll try not to say too much more. Because I want to make sure there's time for questions. So in a moment, Savannah Jyoti will join me again, and we'll answer questions, and then she'll conclude the evening. I was going to talk about what Padmasambhava wears, but actually, as I just pacing around mid-while, I thought actually what I want to talk about is what we need to wear if we want our life to really flourish. Yeah? If we want our life to go somewhere, if we want to make the most of our life, yeah, and what we'll end up wearing is what Padmasambhava is wearing. Yeah, so that's how I thought to do it, because we do want to make the most of our life. I do, you do, and sometimes I do stuff, and sometimes probably you do stuff that really doesn't make the most of anybody's life. Idly, flicking through Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. Yeah. So Padmasambhava, and let's imagine that this is us at the moment, wears 3 robes. Yeah. So against his skin, he wears a blue robe. Yeah. And this blue robe is like a royal robe. Yeah? It's sometimes, you might imagine it embroidered, one of those very rich Tibetan, beautiful, lapis lazuli blue, embroidered with dragons. Yeah? Embroidered with dragons and mystical symbols and so on. Yeah? So this sounds a bit highfalutin, doesn't it? But if we want our life to flourish, if we want to make the most of our life, we need to put on that blue robe next to our skin. Yeah. So blue, of course, is the colour of the ocean. It's the colour of the sky. So it's a metaphor for depth. It's a metaphor for heights. It's interesting. Often it's royal, so it's got sort of majesty to it. Yeah. It's and the sky and the ocean. I know it's not literally true of the ocean, but it's certainly true of the sky. It's infinite. It's not. It hasn't got boundaries. It's not got edges. It's not limited. Yeah. So this is you could say the robe of magic. And what do I mean by magic? What I mean by magic is to really make something of our human life. We need this sense right next to our skin that there's something more to life. Yeah? That life isn't just to do with going to work, having family or not having family, or earning money or getting a house or going on holiday, and isn't just to do with what I know, but that there's something about life to be discovered. There's something about life that wants to be discovered, that's more, that makes life feel rich and as if you're wearing a royal robe. That there's something mysterious about being human, which you have this instinct that you can travel into, you can start to fathom. So this isn't the robe of God, for instance. It's not the robe of saintliness. It's not the robe of the angel. It's an apparently human robe, although this human robe is also a robe of magic. It's the kind of magic you had as a child. I've got 2 girls in my life, and I remember Alex, the oldest, getting to the point where pass the parcel was no longer work. I remember doing one birthday party. I remember when she was 3 doing this birthday party, and the excitement. And it goes, look, there's a thing in every layer. And then later, I remember this one, I find it very touching, that I could see we have now come to the end of Pass the Parcel. They all knew that there was a present in each layer. They all knew that it was a fix. Children, please close your eyes now. Close your ears now. That the person, me doing the music, would stop it when somebody hadn't got one yet. They still sort of enjoyed it, but it had no magic. When she was a child, it had all magic. Yeah. Now we have to leave a certain superstitious magic behind, but we mustn't leave. We must never leave behind a sense that life has mysterious magic, has real magic. I don't want to leave that behind. I think if we leave our innocence, our childhood behind, of unwrapping the parcel, if we think we're too sophisticated for that, we lose not only our innocence, and I actually like that word. I think it's more to it than people make out. We also leave behind magic. So this blue robe is the robe of, I want to explore things. I don't want to just stick in the known. I want my life to be exploring mysteries, especially mysteries of my mind. Yeah, because of course the mind is the one, the most mysterious thing in the universe. Actually, it is the most mysterious thing in the universe. The American poet Wallace Stevens says, "How high that highest candle lights the dark." Yeah. So what he's doing there is just imagining that your mind is like a candle, and look how much light it gives off. How high that highest candle lights the dark. That we, with our human mind, we can, create a space shuttle. We can invent the CAT scan. We can phone somebody from a field. We can do sort of miracles, but that's only the top part of the mind. The mind has got these incredible depths that goes beyond our imagining, basically. And human life is about exploring that depth. That you have on your person the most treasured, mystical thing you could ever have, called a human mind. Yeah. Soon I'm going to be interviewing Ian McGilchrist, the scientist, and it's in this wonderful book on the divided brain and the brain. And what you notice immediately reading him is that you're into mysteries. We have got this most valuable thing called the mind. Yeah. So the blue robe is the robe of mystery, of magic, of depth, of heights, of exploration. It's the robe that's opening yourself to the depths of your mind. And you see how we need that? We need to be putting that robe on. Excuse me. And that's the robe that Pamasambhava is wearing. To remind us of that. Yeah. Now on top of that, excuse me, that blue robe, in a kind of almost opposition to it, because remember, that robe is a royal robe. They're very, very beautiful, embroidered robe. On top of that robe, I don't know what's happening with my mouth, my throat at the moment. I remember a comic when this happened said, "Don't worry, I'm not going to spit." I thought it was very funny. Anyway, on top of that royal blue robe, Pamasambhava is wearing another robe, and we need to wear another robe, which is the robe of the monk, or you could say the nun. Let's not worry about the gender of the robe. What the Buddha wore wasn't a monk's robe as we've come to think of it now, which are rather gorgeous. It's basically rags sewn together. Rags, by the way, that have been stained in mud so that nobody would want them. That's what the Buddha's robe originally was. It wasn't this like nice outfit. It was the rags that you would clean the floor with. They'd be soaked in mud so that they'd be discoloured by this orange mud, and then sewn together in this patchwork just to cover you. Yeah. So to see how, on top of this royal robe, we need to wear, and Pamasambhava wears, the yellow robe of a monk. Yeah, almost like, do you see how it's like a living contradiction? You've got majesty and glory of the imagination. You could call the blue robe simply the robe of the imagination, except for imagination is a rather, I find, a too secular word, in the sense that it's got a glass ceiling on it. It won't allow you, for instance, to have mystical visions, and mystical visions, many people have had them, I've had them, are really to do with your uplifted imagination. They're the imagination in its ascent. So you could say the blue robe is the royal robe of your imagination. But on top of that gorgeous brocade robe is this robe of a beggar. It's hardly a robe, it's just a patchwork robe of a beggar. Yeah. So there seems almost a contradiction in that. So I better move on because time's running out. But do you see how what that robe, and this is a difficult robe to wear, perhaps more difficult now than ever in our technological age, it's a robe of discipline. It's the robe of restraint. It's the robe of training yourself in hard things. Yeah, so difficult now because there's so little between your instinct for restraint and doing what you want. I mean, pornography is the most obvious example, isn't it? Where, when I was young, if I ever wanted to get such a thing, I'd have to go to the local shop, which would be unthinkable. You'd have to reach it down from the top shelf, and I'd have to buy it from somebody who knew my mother. That I just didn't bother. I just didn't go there because it was just too awfully humiliating an experience. I wouldn't even have considered it. Now, all somebody needs to do in the privacy of their phone is press a certain icon. Yeah. So do you see that there's very little between our desires, and we've all got all kinds of desires, not all of which are at all what we'd like to believe is true of us. But there's little that's getting in the way of that now. So ever more we need this robe of restraint. Restraint isn't easy, and yet it's an art. Perhaps we might come back to this as we go through the week, because if you overdo it, you get things wrong. If you underdo it, you get things wrong. So this robe is the robe of restraint, of discipline, of training even, because the Buddha's Dharma is particularly a training, like going to the gym. It's a training that you have to keep doing every day. You have to train your mind, and this robe is like that. Yeah. But it's also the robe of renunciation, obviously, because the monk traditionally, or the nun, left home and left their life, threw away their clothes and just wore these rags. Yeah. So this means, at the very least, it means trying to renounce, working out how to renounce our bad habits, our negativities, and so on. That's not easy to do. So this is a difficult robe to wear, and everyone finds it difficult to wear. But you can't, and everyone would like to think, well, actually, we don't need that. Let's just go for the royal blue. I'd rather like that. We don't need this dirty rag thing on top of it. Actually, you really do. If you don't learn to restrain yourself, your life will go wrong. It's like trying to turn off the computer at night. If you don't learn how to restrain yourself and turn it off, you'll get into trouble. I mean, that's a very vanilla example, isn't it? But you can think of much, much deeper examples, stronger examples. Yeah. So what I think you've got there is almost a contradiction. You've got the royal robe of the imagination, which is all about opening out, about discovery, about being free, like we'll come to this later, the darkening is in the blue sky, being completely free and abandoned. On top of that, you've got this monk's robe of renunciation, discipline, training, letting go of stuff, working at stuff. Yeah, they don't work together. So you need another robe, don't you? I need another robe, and you need another robe. Otherwise, you'll just get. It's almost at the moment you've got this like almost an archetype of an artist. Listen, incredibly imaginative experience, but they need to also discipline themselves. But of course, you need another robe. Otherwise, they'll just polarize. You'll try and discipline yourself, and then you just get drunk. I remember a friend of mine saying, every morning I just wake up saying, that's it, I'm never going to drink again. Such a bad idea. I know it's a bad idea. I don't need to be persuaded of it. Absolutely bad idea. And then they'd be drunk again that night. Yeah. So very often our instinct for discipline separates from our desire for freedom, and they get more and more polarized. So what we need to wear is the red cloak of love. Yeah. So what makes sense of that dichotomy between the two robes, the koan of those two robes, is the capacity to love. Yeah. So surrounding Padmasambhava is this great flowing red cloak of love. Yeah. Of outward goingness, of courage, of a desire is for the best in oneself and in the people around you. Yeah. So that's what Padmasambhava wears, and that's, I think, what we need to wear. We need to have this blue robe of imagination where we are open to mysteries. We don't get stuck in this awful idea that we know stuff. That's a barren place to get stuck in. So we're open to mysteries. Then we need this yellow robe, which is saying, and we need to train ourselves. We need to learn to restrain ourselves, but we need to learn the art of that. It's not going to be an easy thing to learn. How much to do it and how much not to do it. And we need to make sense of that contradiction by loving, by courage, by being outward looking, by going out to people, by trying to understand. Yeah? And that resolves that tension. So let's get Jyoti up again so that we can start to answer any questions. I'll just move a bit. Because it'd be good to have the two of us for this. So yes, if you've got any questions, I hope you have.
Too close.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah. Savannah, Jyoti and I will answer them, or try to answer them.
Am I too far out?
No, that's fine, I think. So sit down.
Oh yeah.
A little bit more in.
Might, yeah.
Yeah, you'll be right.
Yeah.
Am I in?
I'm just trying.
I'm
I'm trying
in.
to be socially distant.
Yeah,
You see.
there you go. That's not too bad. How's that? So whilst you're doing that, let's see from here if there's any questions.
I've got none so far.
Oh. Okay, well, what else should we talk about? So yes, this is...
There will be.
There will be, yeah. Have you got any questions?
I want to know about the dragons.
Yeah, dragons.
I didn't realise. Do they actually? Was that just you being poetic? Saying
might
he's
have
got
been.
dragons on, or does he actually have dragons?
Well,
is it actually?
I think
tradition?
I think sometimes it's me being poetic, but I've definitely heard of it talking about dragons.
Okay.
And again, with stories change by the teller, don't they?
Yes.
Originally stories, in the Western tradition, were something people said, and it was much later they were written down. I'm sure that's true. That's true of the Buddhist tradition. So dragons are this image again of energy unleashed, aren't they? Of all of your energy completely unleashed. You want, at the very least, with that blue robe. So it's interesting you talk about dragons, because if you think of it like dragon robe, then what it's saying is what you need first of all is to be in touch with your energy. Whatever your energy is, whether you're angry, depressed, sleepy, anxious, whatever it is, there's stories about them we know are narcotic, but we need all the energy. So you could say, if you thought of it as a dragon robe, I hadn't thought of it, that means what you want right next to you is you want all your energy. You can't be thinking, actually, I don't want that energy. You need to transform it, but you need your energy. So that would be one way of reading it. But yeah, I think in tradition it is sometimes pictured like that. But I may have added that as well. It wouldn't surprise me.
Not me. Hero, have you got anything?
Yeah, so I've got a question from Bayard. So Bayard's asking if there's any significance of the layers of the robe. For example, the red cloak of love being on the outside.
Well, I mean, I suppose my answer to that was I'm not particular expert in Padmasambhava's robes, so but my response to that idea of having the red robe on the outside is that there's something about that love is sort of the all-encompassing. Love surrounds everything else, and the other, a bit like when Mike Brandon was saying, like the other two things are just not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to bring the renunciation together with the magical imagination in a way that's going to actually achieve anything other than some sort of ping pong from one to the other, or some sort of potentially some kind of split or breakdown, even perhaps. That's got to be held in a context internally, has to be held. So that in a way the love is sort of not on the same level, it's sort of above and around everything else. But that's sort of off the top of my head.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And I think different people, I mean, these kind of core themes of the imagination, the imagination, and then the sort of the discipline and the love, different personality types, you're going to perhaps respond a bit more naturally to one of those. And in a way it's partly about getting to know ourselves, sort of knowing which one we're drawn to, and sort of trying to balance to make sure that you're developing all of those sort of three areas, if you like. Because obviously if you just get whipped away with the imaginative, then you're sort of you're kind of away with the fairies and not grounded, and if you're too focused on the kind of robe of discipline, then you're going to very quickly feel uninspired, and you're probably not going to be much fun to be around. You're going to be a bit rigid and a bit like perhaps a bit judgmental around yourself and others. Likewise, if you sort of just into all the love, then that might turn into something other. Anyway, I'm sort of what's the word?
Extemporising.
Yeah. Extemporising.
You're joining into the story.
I'm joining into the story. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I'd add, might add, is that this word love is, I've always found it a problematic. It's such a big word, and it's like a huge abstraction. And I think we think, well, I don't have that, or I don't. I definitely want it, but you can feel that, like any abstraction, like things like friendship. Do you have friendship? You think, but are you friends with them? Oh yeah. As soon as you abstract things, it always sounds very big, and probably you haven't got it. So another way of thinking about that red robe, it's the robe of understanding. That when you understand somebody, Sangha, the founder of the Sri Ratna Buddhist order and movement, he said that to love someone is to understand them. When you've really understood them, which means empathise with them and try to live through them, as it were, try to see what it's like for them, you end up with love. But it doesn't. Some people feel emotions more strongly than others, don't they? So some people feel very warm emotions a lot. Some people don't. But that may not. It's not that you're necessarily going to be suddenly someone who feels lots of warm emotion. The main thing about that robe is that you're wanting to connect, wanting to understand, wanting to reach out to others. Wanting to engage, not wanting to hurt, and so on.
Yeah, really wanting the best for others and yourself. Yeah.
But you see, if you think of it like that, it's cooler language, and for some people that will appeal.
Great. So Harvey is asking, how do you channel a destructive energy like anger into something more helpful?
That's very
huge. One of the huge kind of questions of practice, isn't it?
It is really,
yeah, and a very good question.
I mean, the first thing I always think about it is, first thing is don't feel guilty about it. Human beings are this strange mixture of creativity and destruction, and creativity and destructiveness are very close to each other. I was watching a film about the painter Frank Auerbach, And he was saying people just don't realise how much of painting is destroying it. He said for him, creation and destruction were very, very close. You're trying to make... They're like twins. It's like a dark twin, destruction. People who are very creative are often quite destructive. So the first thing is not to feel guilty about destructive and angry feelings. The second thing I would say is to try to learn to feel them, especially feel them in the body. The big thing is to get underneath the story of them. It's the story of anger and hatred and aversion that's so narcotic. And the story of those things can destroy people's lives. You see people's lives destroyed by bitterness about the past, about indignation about what's happened to them in the present. And that's to do with the stories they tell themselves. And stories for us, as we're exploring already, they go very, very deep in human beings. So one thing is to try to keep dropping out of the story and being interested to feel the feelings in your body. They're not bad, those feelings in your body. There's nothing wrong with them. Yes, the stories often can be narcotic. And, then you get things like really practical things, like if you tend to lose your temper, you need to, as soon as you think you're likely to, you need to get yourself out of harm's way. Because it's like if you lose your temper, you often say things you don't mean, which are very hurtful. You can be very destructive, and you break down trust when you do that. So if you think you're about to lose your temper, the first thing you need, your first human duty is to get yourself out of harm's way. Remove yourself from the situation. I've had to do it a few times myself. I don't particularly lose my temper, but I have on one or two occasions. I remember once just having to walk out because I would, if I'd stayed, I'd have said things which I would regret. And words, they say sticks and stones can break your bones, but words can never hurt you, but they really can hurt you, and people can remember them and never quite be able to trust you again. But you see, it's a difficult art because a lot of it can't be solved in your mind. You might say something about this as well, that Buddhism's not going to just make you into this sort of nice, pacific person. Because what you'll need to do is feel the feelings in your body, not be guilty about them. If you're going to lose your temper, step away from the situation. But then I think you need to also start to find a way of saying, actually, this is how you need to find a way of talking to somebody that can include your perceptions, which you're bottling up. Now, how you do that skillfully is really quite an art. If you don't do it, it usually doesn't work. If you overdo it, it doesn't work. It's a real challenge. And in a certain sense, so much of the Dharma life is about how do we work with these deep forces, because another one would be lust or something like that. Or disgust is another one that we don't talk about very much. But these sort of deep instincts, how do we transform them so that all the life is in them, but they're no longer dangerous? You might have something more.
I completely agree with all that. I suppose I was thinking. I am a person that I do suffer a lot from anger, and I have to work with that. Probably every day would be a fair thing to say. And I think over my time of practice, I think I definitely trying to feel how it feels in the body, and I find it feels very painful in the body.
Yeah.
So I've learned that actually one of the reasons that I'll lose my temper is almost that I'm trying to get away from how painful it feels in the body. So there's by sort of really building on your mindfulness so that you can really begin to notice when that begins to start happening. So you, in a way, you're sort of by becoming more aware, you can catch it earlier, that feeling of anger. And in a funny way, anger's not so much a primary emotion, I find. I think it is, certainly in myself, and I've seen this in others, it's actually a defence around something else that's behind it. And for me, it's usually when I feel incredibly hurt about something. I mean, you can have anger if it's anger about, say, injustices in the world. But if it's if it's something that somebody's done specifically to me, it's worth thinking. What I will do is I'll think, well, what is this anger trying to sort of protect me from? And if I get to behind the anger and feel that hurt in the body, it's really not very pleasant. But I'm like, oh yeah, that's what the anger's doing. It doesn't want me to have to feel how painful that is. And you may learn that over time that there are certain core sort of themes and types of story or types of experience that are more likely to press that button for you. And you might begin to learn, oh, that's that button. There's that button. For me, I have a really strong button around not feeling seen, like being overlooked and not seen in a particular kind of way. And that can, when I go, oh yeah, that's that button. And instantly, as soon as I can start to recognise that that's what it is, that takes some of that sort of, some of the reactivity out of it. But it's an ongoing challenge. And in a way, that's almost the whole, you could sort of say that the whole tantric tradition and Padmasambhava and everything that's come out of that, in a way, is kind of focused around what are seen as the darker emotions, like particularly, destruction. I mean, probably this week we'll be hearing lots about demons and all sorts of things like that, won't we? So, yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I think that's...
Let's see if there's anything else.
So, Linda asks if there's any relevance of the 42 years.
Yes, I would. What? Kieran was your name just appeared something. Was asking that in the room. Is there any relevance to the 42 years? All I could thought. It's interesting that even though Padmasambhava appears on the Lake of Dharmakosha when he's an 8-year-old, he's usually pictured as a 32-year-old. So he's a fully mature man. Some of the other Buddha figures, we call bodhisattvas, are 16-year-old. So each number has got its own metaphor, its own myth. So there must be something about 42. The only thing I could think of is that it's no, it's probably not. I can't think of it, actually. I'm not sure there is a particular relevance. I think it's just sort of long enough to miss the Buddha, but not forget him, something like that. Just when things are starting to get more difficult because you've been trying to live out this life of value and meaning, when it starts to get difficult, then he appears when you need him. It's probably a metaphor around that, but not much more than that, I think.
Great. So a question from Sophie. So Sophie says she finds it hard to be outwardly focused when she's struggling. And if you can talk more about the outward robe of love, i.e. wanting to reach out to others versus self-care.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that happens to us when we are struggling, without asking more detail about, the specifics of your struggle, I think one of the things that does happen when we're struggling is that we do become more self-absorbed, that we do sort of become, I become, and I do see it in others as well, more sort of, whatever's going on, it's more and more and more about me. So it's almost like I sort of get smaller and smaller and tighter and more sort of, in myself or something like that. And again, a bit like the thing with Harvey, when I answered to Harvey, there's something there about becoming, sort of noticing that that's happening, noticing that I'm getting smaller and tighter and more kind of wrapped up in myself somehow, and I would caution against this idea of being other-focused versus self-care, I think was the phrasing of the question, because I actually think that the key is that sort of both need to happen simultaneously, or it neck and neck in a way, because being struggling and being all self-focused and going round and round and round in head, oh, this is so terrible, and why has this happened to me, and it always happens to me, and it's not fair, and whatever it might be that the struggle is, that it is not helping you, and it's not self-care, even though it's very seductive to want to do that. I know I do it a lot, so I do know this. But there's something about noticing that and somehow being able to bring a kind of loving care to your own suffering in that you are creating that suffering more. And one way, so by bringing some kind of loving kindness and metta to that in yourself, and finding some way to do something that is for somebody else, even if it's something quite small, because it's something about changing this energy that's going inwards and getting tighter and tighter, and softening that. So you can soften that by thinking, oh, bless me, look, I'm doing this thing that I do to myself again. Can I just soften about the fact that hurts? And can I do something for somebody else? And even that will just soften the edges of that kind of suffering. And I would put that under the label of love. But as Mike Bandhu said, love is such an overused word, and it's used for far too many different things, and so it can never quite find a word that is sort of quite the right. That's why we tend to use the word metta, which is a Buddhist word, which kind of includes love, loving kindness, gentleness, compassion. So that would be my response. I don't know if you want to say. I know you're not so keen on self-metta.
No, I'm all for self-metta.
Not for yourself, though.
I mean, I think you're exactly right. It's interesting. It's the red robe. So, as you say, it's has to go round experience. Has to go around your own experience if you can. At the very least, so if love feels too much, at least be patient. Sometimes we can't. You know how we get stuck in places. Sometimes at least we can say let's just be patient. This too will change. Yeah? So that robe is also the robe of patience. Interesting. Kshanti in Buddhism, which is the word that's translated for patience, has very strong connotations of love. So the attitude of patience towards others or towards yourself is itself an attitude of love. Yeah, to use that word. The other thing I'd say, and perhaps we will better move on in a minute, is that just the importance of being generous, like you were saying, in simple ways. I mean, Mike, you were saying I'd be a bit cautious about self-care, and that's from my own biography where, I was taught the metta practice. I tried to develop metta towards myself, and frankly, it made matters worse at first, because I just felt that, how I just couldn't do it. So the attitude of trying to love myself, care for myself in the metta bhavana, all it did for me, and this is when I was younger, and it might not be true for you, I hope it isn't, but all it did for me is make me think I couldn't do it. So actually, something that could help was made not helpful. That's why I wanted to be more careful about these things. What I did find helpful right from the beginning was just being generous. Because even in small ways, when I was generous, I stopped being kind of, because when you're in a bad state, the first thing that happens is you isolate yourself. And that isolation makes the bad state worse. As soon as you're generous, you're not, in that moment, you're not isolating yourself. And also you give yourself this message that I am someone who has something to give. Even if it's just making someone a cup of tea. People really appreciate it. And you're someone who has something to give. When you're in a negative state, you think that I'm someone who hasn't got anything to give. And I need to sort myself out. And you're right. I'm not advocating you just be generous and forget that. You do need to work interiorly, as it were, with that agonised feeling, if that's what you get into. But generosity sort of expands your consciousness, like the red robe, out into the world when you want to retract. So I think it is both. I think what you're saying is right. But
and it's not easy.
It's
so
not
good
easy.
luck.
Yeah. But perhaps.
Yes. Yes, I think we're going to have to leave the questions there for tonight, folks. Mike Pandy and I are going to be back on Wednesday, so if you have any burning questions, you want to save them till Wednesday, or you can ask Akasha Mitra and Surya Gupta tomorrow night. Okay, so what we're going to do now, are you going to stay there?
Yeah.
You are, okay.
Unless you want to
We did talk about it before we started tonight. I know it doesn't really look like it.
Let's want to leave.
So what we're going to do is we're going to do no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do that in a minute. Before we're going to do a short Buddhist ritual to finish the evening with some chanting. And in a way, ritual, well, there's so much that could be said about ritual, and you may have your own responses to the idea of us doing some ritual now. But I'd really just encourage you to, it's all in English. There are, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. There's nothing that you're not going to understand the words of. And in a way, when we're doing ritual, we're sort of speaking to a deeper part of ourselves, a part that can connect with this blue robe and the dragons and the magic. And we've really lost that in our culture these days. So we're just sort of not so familiar with it. But actually, you could just give it a go, give yourself over to it, and see what effect it has. And then we're going to finish the ritual with a chant, which is a Padmasambhava mantra, a traditional Padmasambhava mantra. And again, that's it's syllables and a sort of play on his name, so you don't need to worry too much. You're not saying anything, you're not promising anything to do anything that you wouldn't want to do or anything like that. It's more just like a bringing of the energy into your vocal cords, into your body. So it's a way of sort of tapping into that sort of energy. I think that's probably enough. Before we go on to that, I don't think I want to say anything more about that. But just before we set up for that, just to let you know that this course, as you know, is free, and we've been offering this course to you for this week. And we're all here doing this as volunteers, so we're not the teaching team this week. We do this voluntarily because we want to be able for people all over the world to have the opportunity to hear something about the Buddha's teachings and about Padmasambhava. Our lovely tech team here, they're also here giving their time up. And it's all part of this kind of spirit of generosity. It's interesting that we finished just there on a question that was about kind of giving to others. And there is something very connecting about generosity. And as much as possible, we're trying to run the London Buddhist Centre on the spirit of generosity. So hence, we're not charging for this course, but we are asking if you would like to join with that spirit of generosity, and you are able to give some money for the course. That would be really, really gratefully received. We do need money to run to continue to operate, and like with many places, our income has really been decimated quite substantially by the current COVID pandemic. So if you can give and you'd like to give us some money, please do. I think, Hero, will you be putting a link in the chat box? That's fantastic. And if you're not able to do that, or you don't want to do it, then that's also fine. We just want you to have access to the course. Okay. So let's set up for the if you want to do the lights, Kieran, that would be fantastic. Let me just get myself. Let's just pull that over. Just need the. Oh, I should probably. Oh no, that's not going to work, is it? it there. I hope I can still read it. Sorry, my eyes are... No, I think I'll be all right. Hang on, let me see. Yeah, I can hold the book. That's okay.
Oh, well, no, that's what I thought I'd do that.
Okay. So we're going to do what's called a threefold puja. Puja is just a Buddhist word for devotional ritual, would be one way of thinking of it. And in a way, all we're doing in this is we're sort of making an offering, if you like, to our highest potential, to the teachings that can lead us there, and to the other people that are trying to share that journey with us. So that would be one way of thinking about it. And we will ourselves make some offerings during it. Yeah, I think that's probably it. So maybe just starting by just connecting back with your seat. Maybe taking a couple of deeper breaths. And just seeing if you can just relax into your body, not in a sort of slumping way, but in a sort of like when you look up into a sunny sky, that sense of relaxation in your body. And just allowing yourself to absorb everything that we've been doing this evening. The threefold puja, opening reverence. We reverence the Buddha.
We reverence the Buddha,
The perfectly enlightened one,
the perfectly enlightened one,
the shower of the way.
the shower of the way.
We reverence the Dharma,
We reverence the Dharma,
the teaching of the Buddha,
the teaching of the Buddha,
which leads from darkness to light.
which leads from darkness to light.
We reverence the Sangha,
We reverence the Sangha,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
the fellowship of the Buddha's disciples,
that inspires and guides.
that inspires and guides.
Reverence to the three jewels. We reverence the Buddha
We reverence the Buddha
and aspire to follow him.
and aspire to follow him.
The Buddha was born
The Buddha was born
as we are born.
as we are born.
What the Buddha overcame,
What the Buddha overcame,
we too can overcome.
we too can overcome.
What the Buddha attained,
What the Buddha attained,
we too can attain.
we too can attain.
We reverence the Dharma
We reverence the Dharma
and aspire to follow it.
and aspire to follow it,
With body, speech and mind,
with body, speech and mind,
until the end.
until the end.
The truth in all its aspects,
The truth in all its aspects,
the path in all its stages.
the path in all its stages.
We aspire to study,
We aspire to study,
practice,
practice,
realize.
realize.
We reverence the Sangha
We reverence the Sangha
and aspire to follow it.
and aspire to follow it,
The fellowship of those
the fellowship of those
who tread the way.
who tread the way.
As one by one,
As one by one,
we make our own commitment,
we make our own commitment,
an ever-widening circle.
an ever-widening circle.
The Sangha grows.
The Sangha grows.
Offerings to the Buddha. Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer flowers.
we offer flowers.
Flowers that today
flowers that today
are fresh and sweetly blooming.
are fresh and sweetly blooming.
Flowers that tomorrow
Flowers that tomorrow
are faded and fallen.
are faded and fallen.
Our bodies too,
Our bodies too,
like flowers,
like flowers,
will pass away.
will pass away.
Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer candles.
we offer candles.
To him who is the light,
To him who is the light,
we offer light.
we offer light.
From his greater lamp,
From his greater lamp,
a lesser lamp we light within us.
a lesser lamp we light within us.
The lamp of Bodhi,
The lamp of Bodhi,
shining within our hearts.
shining within our hearts.
Reverencing the Buddha,
Reverencing the Buddha,
we offer incense.
we offer incense.
Incense whose fragrance pervades the air.
Incense whose fragrance pervades the air.
The fragrance of the perfect life,
The fragrance of the perfect life,
sweeter than incense,
sweeter than incense,
spreads in all directions
spreads in all directions
throughout the world.
throughout the world. Om Ahum Vajra Guru Padma Siddhi Om. 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 So that's all we've got time for tonight. We've run a little bit over time. So we'll be closing here in the centre in a moment. Danny will come and put out the candles. And then what I would suggest is that you just then flip down your laptop, and let's leave it at that for tonight. And then tomorrow morning,
8 o'clock.
at 8 o'clock, we've got Dayabhadra teaching those of you who are learning the meditations, and then Suragupta teaching those of you who've learnt the meditations already and want to go deeper in meditation. Then we've got events through the day, we've got yoga, and then we've got another evening, tomorrow evening, exploring.
Good night.
Good night.